Alright, so here's how the front of the case is looking, and I know I showed this last night. It's the next night now, but I think I mentioned I did rebend this tube, and then I actually rebent this one as well, because when I was looking at this, these two lines weren't exactly parallel, and I really wanted them to be. So now it looks a lot better, a lot more clean. You can see there's a compound bend in there so that it goes into the CPU water block a little bit more nice. One thing that I am maybe not super concerned about, but may want to change, is that for whatever reason in the multi-card kit, it came with 12 millimeter lines, and these are 14 millimeter. And what that means is when you have these in parallel, it's going to be easier for the water to flow through this graphics card than to flow up through here, because it chokes a little bit. Maybe choking isn't the right technical word. It necks down here, and so there's a little bit more resistance to flow. And so that means that this graphics card and the CPU up here might get a little bit less flow rate. There still should be plenty though. It's probably okay. But I really am liking the way this looks right now. Got some blue tape on here just to hold these wires in place. But now I want to flip over to the other side. So if we look here in the back, you can see that it's pretty much a rat's nest of wires right now. Here are the wires for the fans that are on the front side, and I just got the pump and reservoir combo mounted over here. Now this was kind of an interesting mounting. 4 screws right here, and they're actually in kind of this like random pattern of slots right here. That is the only place I could get it to fit. Now, there was another option that I could have done, which I liked some aspects of it, but didn't like others, which is I could have actually mounted it on this, like actually outside of the case back here, and then pass the hardline tubing through these graphics card slots. So what would have been nice about that? Well, it's a lot less crowded out there. The tube routing might be a little bit less difficult, but then it is on the outside of the case, and that doesn't look as clean from the outside. With the reservoir mounted here, it's going to be more challenging to fill. It's going to be harder to get the cables around, but it is contained within the case. And now I'm just planning out how I'm going to route the next tube. So I mentioned earlier in the video, I've got a 140 millimeter radiator with 140 millimeter fan. That's going to go down over here. So I can't really do any of that routing, but I can get the outlet from the pump reservoir, or sorry, the inlet to the pump reservoir coming from the 240 millimeter radiator fan up there. So we're going to have a tube coming from one of these. I got to double check which one's the inlet, but I want to make sure it's the inlet so that I get the flow correct. And that's going to go possibly up, 90-degree bend out through here. And then when it comes to the other side, 90-degree bend up to this port right here, because that one's closest. And then what I'm going to do is, obviously this is going to have to come down to the 140 millimeter radiator down here, but I'm also going to need to send a line down to the inlet, what's going to be the inlet of this radiator right here. And what I want to try and do is get parallel tubes coming all the way down. That way I preserve kind of this like parallel tube look right here. But not going to be able to do a ton of that right now, but since I don't have the 140, what I can do is get this in here. So I'm going to go ahead and get to bending, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like when it's all fitted up. So guys, in the process of making my first bends ever, as you can see, I messed up a bunch of them. I can't remember if I showed you this earlier, but you can actually use these messed up pieces to your advantage, and that is to help measure things out. So we're going to make a line going from this port right here through the back of the case to the reservoir. And what I can do is I cut a piece of this off, and I can just kind of mock it up in place here, go to the other side of the case, and just make sure see where I'm lining up. I know you guys can't see it on the other side, but see where I'm lining up? And it actually doesn't line up that bad, and I can get an idea of how long I need the piece to be. I can do the same thing the other way. Get it lined up on the fitting back here. I don't know if you guys can see it poking through right here. Maybe not because the lighting is not super good, but then I can just take a look and see where I'm at. And it looks like actually a piece about this long is going to be just right. So I can take my fresh tubing and I'll line it up here like this. I'll go, you know, across 90 degrees on the bend, flip it around. I'm going to need another 90-degree bend like so. And then obviously I'm going to want to have some extra length so that I can trim that down to size. So I think I will actually clip this right about here. And there you go. You can measure a little bit of length. Now this is actually about half the tube. So I had to order some more tube, guys, because, you know, I messed a bunch of these up and I'm not going to use any of those. So I guess if this is your first time doing this, I would order 2 packs of tubing. And then, you know, you get some good practice with this because you don't want your bends kind of looking like crap. So anyway, just a little tip. It is another day. Here we have the 140 millimeter QL fan and the 140 millimeter radiator. Really happy that that stuff came in the mail. I did finish this like S-bend up here. Goes into the back of the case and plugs into the inlet into this pump reservoir. And I also bent this tube right here, which is coming from the outlet of the pump reservoir, and that goes through to the other side of the case again. And that's going to go into this bottom port on the 360 millimeter radiator. And I've got blue tape over these ports right now because I don't want any dust to get in there, any contamination. This bend right here, honestly, this was actually a little bit easier to make than this one up here. This one, the length had to be like really precise, and I might honestly even rebend this when I get more tubing because I did kind of have to press a little bit harder than I would have liked to get it to fit. But anyway, the reason why I don't have this connected up is because you can see right here that in order to get through the case right here, the length, it ends up a little bit above where this is. So I'm going to have to get some more 90-degree fittings, and I'm going to do a 90 up this way and then a 90 that way to get this to fit. May need to heat up just this section right here of this tube in order to get that to line up correctly, but got that tube in there. And now what I'm going to do is get this fan and this radiator put in here, and then hopefully with some of like the very little tubing that I have left because I screwed up a lot of times, hopefully I'll be able to make another connection here, and then I can decide how many more fittings that I need to buy for this other stuff. And sorry, the voice sounds a little bit hoarse. One of my coworkers did get me sick, but it's not that bad. I haven't gotten a fever, at least not yet. It's just been kind of an annoying sinus thing. I don't know if it's the Rona, but I'm not going to get tested. So, you know, whatever. I'm almost over it. Anyway, we're going to get this stuff put in here and then see if I can make another bend, and then we'll go from there. All right, so I decided that I was going to mount this radiator and fan in this fashion with the ports closer to the outside. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to make sure that the tubing really gets displayed when you look at the case from the side. So at this point, I did make this bend right here. And the challenging thing about this bend, you'll see it's not super pretty. And that's because the distance in this direction was actually shorter than, you know, the actual bend radius right here. So, you know, if this is your first time doing liquid cooling, just keep in mind, or custom liquid cooling, I should say, with hardline tubing, keep in mind that your bend tool might run into challenges here. And what's really hard is heating it in the correct spot without undoing a bend that you already did. Now, I've I've made so many mistakes that I don't have enough tubing left to reattempt this bend. It fits in here right now, and it's pretty snug, but I really want it to be a little bit more clean, so this might be something that I decide to do with fittings rather than bending like this, although it would be nice if I could just get, just a solid bend right here, but I don't know if that's going to be necessarily possible with the tools that I have at my disposal right now. Anyway, that said, what's going to be nice about this is, so now there's going to be, and this is just a mock piece right here, but there's going to be another tube. Let me see if I can switch hands here. So there's going to be another tube that comes out the bottom here that's going to go this way and connects to this port on this radiator. So I can go ahead and make that bend. I think I'm going to need another 90-degree fitting coming out of here so that I can make it an S shape like this. Obviously this one's too short and it's a scrap piece, but make it an S shape like this, and then it'll just plug in there. And then what's going to happen is there's going to be a piece that a tube that kind of goes over this from this port right here out over, and it'll come over here and then make a bend up toward this port right here. And what I'm really excited about that is they'll basically be a straight piece coming just right in between this radiator and the graphics cards. And I think that's going to look really cool. It's going to frame the entire setup really well, but obviously I am completely out of tubing, so I need to wait, unfortunately, until Monday before I can make that. But I think that I can make this bend, at least one of the bends right here, kind of mock it up into place and see how it's going to fit, and then I actually have to order some more fittings. So the fittings that I'm going to need is another 90 coming out of here, 90 swivel probably, and then I need another 90 swivel on this back one to meet up with this tube coming from the back. And just to be safe, I'll probably grab another pack, a couple different packs of fittings and stuff like that. 2 packs of these fittings are like $25 a piece, so it's going to get pretty expensive, but hopefully I can get that stuff delivered Monday too, and then sometime next week can actually finish out the build. So anyway, this is what it's looking like right now, and I'm really liking the way that it's coming together. I just especially like how there's this dual kind of setup coming in here. Got another radiator down here. I'm really looking forward to there being kind of tubes crisscrossing over here. We'll make it look very industrial and, look like, I don't know, just like a factory or something like that, which has like a bunch of overhead piping and stuff going to different spots and conduit and things like that. And yeah, so I'm going to try and make another bend. Maybe I'll film that, or maybe I'll wait until I get more parts so I can just finish out the thing. But so far, so good, guys. So catch you guys in a little bit. Guys, so got this one bent up. Got some masking tape over it to make sure no debris gets in there. And it's like 3 millimeters too short. So that is the last pretty much of the tubing that I have until I get another box of it. So let that be a lesson, you guys. If you're going to do this for the first time, just buy double the amount of tubing you need. And also, I would say buy more fittings than you think you need, because when you screw up these bends like multiple times in a row and you just start thinking to yourself, man, I just want to use fittings, because fittings are way easier. Obviously, if I just had a 90 coming out of here, and then 90s going into here, then I only have to cut basically just this length. It's way easier. I don't have to worry about bending. But bending does make it look just a lot more clean. So despite that, I'm still really excited about the way this is turning out. And I have a different idea now for where I want to run the line from this port right here, which is going to be the outlet port of this 140 millimeter radiator. I think I'm going to put a 90 on here because I got those on order. Then we're going to have a tube that comes out like this, and I'm going to run it parallel with these, at which point it's going to duck over like this and then come here and duck over like that. And so what there's going to be, if I can get a good shot here, is it's going to go up like that. And I actually like that better than running the line over here, because I don't want to cover up these fittings. I think the fittings look pretty cool right here, just being in a row. And if I get a third line right here like this is a screwed up piece, obviously, unfortunately. Maybe it's long enough to make this, try that again, but you can see if I just have these like 3 tubes parallel here, and once it's all lit up with coolant in it and everything, I think that's gonna look really sweet. So project is now on pause until next Monday when the new tubing comes in, and that's unfortunate because I am no longer on vacation next Monday. And the extra fittings that I ordered unfortunately aren't going to be around for maybe another week either. So man, I'm pretty bummed out because this was kind of my big project I wanted to get done. And then I had to go into my other job on an unexpected day, and also I just screwed up these bends way too many times. And you can't really buy this PETG tubing from like a random store. I would have gone out to a store and bought all these parts, but you actually can't really buy them anywhere. So anyway, guys, I am going to catch you guys in about a week, I guess. Going to have to do a little bit more delayed gratification on this one. So maybe I'll be feeling better from being sick, though, so that's good. Anyway, catch you guys in a bit. So quick update here. So in the process of bending this one right here, I discovered that the bend radius was a little bit too large on this bending tool that I have over here. This guy right here. So if we look at this on a carpenter's square, it's about, maybe 1 inch and 3/8 radius or whatever. But I actually figured out that if I just use this carpenter's square and, kind of hand bend things, I can actually get a radius that's a little bit tighter, about 1 inch radius. Basically, when you're using the heat gun and the tubing in order to do, these short bends, unfortunately, you really have to pay close attention to even heating. You can see, like, I screwed this one up, because when you have the tool right here, you have a groove in here that's the shape of the tube. And if you have uneven heating and the cross-section tries to bulge like this tool will prevent it from doing that. Also, if the cross-section wants to smash in like this, you have the groove of the tool to kind of prevent that from happening. When you're bending just freehand, my recommendation is go extremely slow and really watch where you need more heat. So in this case, what happened was I had the radius hot enough, but then over here was not hot enough. And so this portion of the tube was more flexible than the actual radius. So when I pressed down, this way, in order to bend it, then that's when the cross-section crumpled against there. So that's completely screwed up. Now, it's definitely a little bit harder, but I was able to salvage a piece that was just barely long enough to get in here. And the bends don't look atrocious. This one is definitely not as good as this one, but this one actually doesn't look that bad now that I'm looking at it more carefully here. So anyway, we have this line going in here. Now, when I do this one, once I get more parts, this one's going to be important because I'm actually going to put a Y connection here so I can put a ball valve on the end of this so that I can easily drain the system if I need to. That's one thing that also what's nice about having that in this position here is when the case is tilted on its side like this is actually the highest point in the case, and then when the case is tilted back vertically, this is going to be one of the lowest points right here. So I'm really happy that I was able to salvage this piece right here. You can see this piece coming back through here. and then need to get rotary adapters to hook this piece up, which is coming from the back of the case like you saw earlier. So things are really coming together, and I'm really looking forward to, you know, just having my final tube come right here. So I just have this, you know, trifecta of coolant coming through right here, and I think that's going to look really dope when it's all lit up. There's just going to be this solid core of, you know, radioactive purple material. At least that's the way I like to pretend that it is in my head. So just wanted to give you guys that quick update, and now again it's unfortunately the waiting game for when that other tubing comes in. I could do some wire cable management, I suppose, but I do, well, yeah, I could, because this last connection is actually going to be is not going to interfere with any cables, actually. So I could do that. That's going to be a pain. Anyway, yeah, just wanted to show you guys that tip. You can actually just use a carpenter square and do it by hand. You just got to be a little bit more careful. So, of course, forgot to mention one thing. So the reason why I needed a tighter bend radius here is, let's say I grab one of these other pieces where I had the larger bend radius. It's really apparent on this end. So if I have this larger bend radius, see how it makes the height a little bit higher on this end, and therefore it causes an interference here. Now you might say, okay, well, why don't you just cut this? Well, hang on. Why don't you just cut this end right here? Well, then I'd have the actual radius riding into the actual fitting right here. And that is definitely an easy way to get leaks, because it won't sit you know, perfectly like kind of planar with the seal. So anyway, had to get a tighter bend radius because the overall height from here to here, this distance right here, was just too small to have such a large bend radius. So that's definitely something that it's really difficult to know until you're actually in here working with the components, like whether or not you're going to have an issue with that. But it is something definitely to think about. And actually this bend right here, this is another area where a smaller bend radius actually would have been really good. I kind of got lucky with this piece, and it fits. It doesn't fit perfectly, but it fits good enough. That said, you know, here it just would not work without that smaller bend radius. So, you know, once you're actually in your system and thinking about those different things, you might, if you run into an issue where you're like, God, I just, you know, I can't get this to fit, no matter, I get the length right, but then I can't get it to fit. It could be the bend radius, and try to give yourself a shorter bend radius by using a carpenter square, or, you know, kind of MacGyver up your own setup there. Also going to put this fan up in there. So catch you guys when I have more tubing.
What is good, guys? Hope you guys, well, just want to say thanks again for making it to this point in the video. This is, of course, the very end. This segment, part number 4, is a little bit shorter than the others, but it does look like, from, you know, rewatching the footage, that a lot was accomplished. We got several bends done in this video, and also shared with you guys a couple important techniques. I'll just run through those really fast right here. Number 1 is definitely order extra parts, order extra tubing, order extra fittings, etc. Number 2 is you can go by hand bending things with a carpenter square, some graph paper, something like that, to help you get those bends with a tighter radius than the bending tool. Sometimes that's going to be necessary for your setup, and it's going to be unique to your setup. So make sure you get everything arranged, you know, all the radiators where you want them to be. And then, unfortunately, it is going to be a little bit of a trial and error process, but that's why you're going to get extra tubing. Third thing I want to mention is you can see the running total is racking up there, close to $1,600 at this point. And the only thing that I have taken off that list is a 240 millimeter radiator, which is only $70, but at this point the running total accounts for that. So guys, this is a pretty expensive endeavor. And of course, the more fittings and things that you need to get, the harder it's going to be. So the cheapest thing to do is make all your bends with hardline tubing. That said, sometimes the bends can just be too challenging, or you don't have enough space, and unfortunately fittings is just the way you have to go to make certain connections. But fittings do also look cool. So with that, I'm going to end this one, guys. Of course, I'll say it again. It's worth repeating. Thank you guys for watching to the end, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. So have a good night.